In this lecture, we're going to start to really build the tour overview page. And remember that this is how the overview page looks like right now. So it doesn't have any real content, and so that's what we're going to add in this video. So we're here in this root route, and so again, that's where the overview will be. Okay? So in our view router, it is then, of course, this route. Okay, and so the controller that is in charge of rendering this page is the get overview controller. Okay, and so let's first go to here and lay out the steps that we're going to take in order to render this page. So the first thing that we need to do is to actually get all the tour data from our collection, right? So get tour data from collection. Then second, we're going to build our template. And we're not going to do that here in this controller function, of course, but let's still write it here. So build template, and then finally render that template using the tour data from step 1. So starting with the first step here, get the tour data from the collection. That means that, of course, we first need to actually import the tour model. So that's something that we already did a lot of times before. That's actually one level up, and then in models and tour model. And then we're also going to need our catch async function, because then, of course, this get overview will become an asynchronous function. All right. So let's mark this one as async. We now also need next here in order to make the catch async function actually work. Okay. And so I hope that now you actually start to see the value of us having built all the API stuff and all the code that we did up until this point, so that all we need to do now is to really plug all these pieces together. Okay, so we already know now how to do all of this stuff. We already have our tour model working correctly. And so now all of this is very easy. So const tours is equal to await. So again, nothing new at this point. And find all of them basically. All right. And now what are we actually going to do with these tours data? Well, we're going to have to pass all this tour data into the template so that then in there we can actually use and display it on the website, right? And so that's actually very easy to do. All we need to do is to put it here in this object that is going to get passed into the overview template in this case. Okay, so very easy. All we need to say is tours. So that's the same as tours equals to tours. And again, you already know that starting with ES6, it's enough to do it like this. Great. So whenever there is now a request for the overview page, so basically our homepage of our dynamically rendered website, all the tour data will be retrieved from our database here, and then that data will get passed into our template. And so now all we need to do is to actually build that template, right? So let's move over to overview.pug. Here we can actually get rid of this h1 placeholder here. And now I want to take a look actually at the static HTML file here again. So that's in the public folder, and then overview.html. Okay, so we already built the header in one of the previous lectures, and so now it's time to build that part here. Now, when we first built the template, I actually had it wrong in my HTML file, and I had section class overview. But in your starter file, you should have had this main with the class main. And so I believe in your file, there's actually a small text explaining that. Okay, but anyway, we actually deleted that part from our base template. So remember that here in the content, we actually have no HTML. So that main element that's in the HTML is right now nowhere to be found. And so now we need that in our overview. Okay, so let's create this part of the HTML in the overview, because after that we then have all these repeating cards. So let's take a look at that as well before copying the code. So you see that we have this card here, and so basically each of these cards, so each of these elements here is what I call one card. And so basically we're going to have 9 cards. So these 9 cards on this overview page. And it's 9 cards because right now we have 9 tours, but of course it could be less or more of these cards. Right? But anyway, what's important to note here is that these cards actually repeat themselves over and over again. So we have this huge card element here. And so that's the first one. And then there are many equal repeating elements afterwards. Okay? And so actually I went ahead and created a Pug template for this card only, so that we don't have to write it manually now and waste a bunch of time doing that. Alright, so that would just make the course unnecessarily long, and so I decided to create this template beforehand for us to use now. Now of course, if you want to practice your Pug skills a bit more, then just feel free to pause the video at this point and then translate all of this code into Pug. Alright, and when you're done, you can then come back. But I will now actually go ahead and use that template, and that's here in dev data, and then templates, and tour card template. Okay, and so that's the entire code for one card, basically translated to Pug code. Okay, so let's copy all of that, put that here in the overview. Okay, and then let's keep in mind that before that we also need this main and this card container. So let's just copy this as well. So just here as a reference, so that we can now write main, and then in there we have a div called card container. Okay, and then as the name says, that container is going to contain the card. So let's now indent this, because right now it's not really inside of the card container. So right now it would be inside of main, but that's not what we want. And so I select everything and hit tab. I hit tab again, and so now we see it's at the correct level. It's inside of the card container. But actually it's still not 100% correct, because these elements should also be inside of the card element. And for some reason, copying this template from one file to the other kind of messed this code up a little bit. And so be careful with that when you paste the code around like this. So in our original template, it was all correct, as you see, but then when we copied it, it kind of messed up. So let's close that. We can actually also close this. We don't need it anymore. And in fact, also the base template and the tour template. So we're only working with the overview now. And so right now we have this one card here. Now, as you see, it's also a completely static card. So it doesn't yet use the data that we passed into the template, right? So it has this static image, it has all of this text here, and it doesn't use the variable at all. Okay, because that part I actually wanted to do together with you. Because in fact, that is the most important part. So creating all of this template like this is not difficult, and what really matters is how to actually fill it up with data. Okay, and so that's what we're going to do next. But for now, let's take a look at how this looks like right now. And keep in mind that we should only have one card and not 9, okay? Because again, we have only one static card element at this point. Reload this. And that doesn't look so right. So let's try to figure out what's going on here. So we have our main element as we created. Then we have our card container as well. But then for some reason there is a main in there again. Okay. I of course need to delete this original HTML element that we had there. So let's try that again. And now that looks better. Okay. Now the image here is still missing, but never mind about that for now. What's important is that we got this nice looking card here. Okay. Now the thing is that of course we want to have one card for each of the tours, right? And so basically what we want to do now is to loop through that tours array that we passed into the template, right? So basically this tours variable. And keep in mind that this is an array because it contains multiple tour documents in it. And so let's now loop over this array and create one card for each of the tour documents. Okay? And luckily that's very easy to do in Pug because basically Pug comes with built-in loops. Okay? And so now we can do each tour in tours. Okay? And so tours here is the variable that we passed in, and then in each iteration the current variable will be called tour. And we could call it x or xyz or whatever, but it makes sense to just call it tour. Okay? And so in each iteration what comes then in there is what will be printed basically. So this again needs to be indented one more level so that basically it is inside of this loop declaration here. Great. So let's see how that looks like now. And so we should now get 9 identical cards. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. All right. Now, of course, this data here is still not created dynamically. And that is actually exactly what we're going to fix in the next video.